Hello friends, I'm Kerry Pharr. Welcome to today's edition of In Your Corner. Nick Astore joins us today, and this young man has an amazing story. Nick, so glad to see you on In Your Corner. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Nick, you know, you're from New York originally, close to the city. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up. And
I grew up in a pretty big school district, a big town. My town consisted of 3 little surrounding cities. It was Mastic Beach, Shirley. We all went to one big school. I grew up in a pretty rural area. I mean, I'd go to my friend's house, knock on their door. It wasn't use a phone. We'd go to each other's house, go outside, play. And I had a real tight-knit family, a good family. I had grew up with 2 sisters. I have a brother. Always, all of us pretty much athletic, except for my one sister. She was more the artsy type, still drawn to this day. She is a real good artist, making a real good life for herself. And my parents pretty much sacrificed anything for us. They did anything for us. I know with 4 kids, we were all about 4 years apart, and my mom would wake up every morning. She had to go to work in the afternoon. She'd work as a waitress and work until like 2 or 3 in the morning, but she'd make sure she had a hot meal on the table for us, breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything, make us lunch every day, send us off to school. A wonderful woman, and my dad, he worked 2 jobs his entire life, still to this day working 2 jobs. Supported us well. He wasn't more of the talkative type and the guy that just come up and tell you he loves you and give you a hug, but he supported you in everything you did, and he knew he loved you, and I was always grateful for that. They did a lot for me.
sound like you grew up in a wonderful family.
Yeah.
Now, you grew up close to New York City, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close, about 45 minutes an hour.
45 minutes from New York City, from Manhattan.
Yeah, yeah.
So you grew up in an Italian-American family.
I did.
Yeah, I got to eat lots of pasta growing up, lots of pizza.
Spaghetti meatballs all the time.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, as I told you earlier. I'm not Italian, but I love the Italians. You know, but as you were growing up, I mean, you grew up in this amazing family unit, very supportive mom and dad, took care of you, but somewhere along the way, you kind of got off on the wrong track. Tell us what happened.
Well, I remember about 4th or 5th grade, there was something about me. I was always athletic, and that's kind of what got me the attention, even young growing up. But I just didn't, you know, I always didn't feel comfortable. I felt like I didn't have the words to say. I didn't know what to do. So I started trying to fit in and seek approval in all groups. Like, I wanted to go to the cool kids. I wanted them to like me. I joined the band. I wanted the band kids to like me. So I just started doing anything to seek approval. I remember it was 5th grade, and this kid in my class he was getting in trouble. And I think like the best depiction of me and how it continued is in 5th grade, he picked up this chair, he threw it in the teacher's direction and stormed out of the classroom, and we were all sitting together, and then another kid that wasn't even involved, but we were all friends, he got up and kind of did the same thing. So I thought, well, this is my chance to really fit in, and I got up and did the same thing. And after that point, it was from like 6th to 8th grade on, I was on the varsity baseball and football team in middle school. I was 7th grade, I was getting my own little bus. I was on the announcement for both schools. I was getting a lot of attention, and I started seeking approval in the same ways. I think I was about 12, 13 years old. It was somewhere in there, and I started hanging out with this kid that I knew was probably not good news. His brothers, sisters, all of them were affiliated in some type of way, and I'd go hang out over there after school. And I remember one day I had my opportunity. They were rolling some marijuana, and they said, "You want to try it?" And I was only about 12 years old, and they were all doing it. My buddy was doing it, so I said, yeah, let's do it. And I picked it up and didn't know what I was doing at all. And I remember getting high, and then that same night I started drinking for the first time too. And after that time, it all kind of changed. They started giving me drugs to sell. They were giving me like $10 a week. It turned to like $50 a week, and at 13 years old, I was making $50 a week. I thought I was on top of the world at the time, and I just continued that lifestyle.
Yeah. And so you started out like most people using marijuana, and then as you got older, it graduated to harder stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. About 14 years old, I was using cocaine, selling cocaine, playing on the varsity team.
Were you snorting cocaine at this time? Is that what you were doing? You weren't?
Yeah.
You weren't shooting it or anything?
Not yet, not at this time. And I really didn't ever get into that too much. I did a little bit. I dabbled as I got older and tried it. But at this time, no, it was more just I was trying to have fun, so I got all the uppers, the psychedelics, and that's what I sold, I used, and partied every weekend. I remember there was times at 14, 15 years old, me and my group of friends were in the woods across school smoking and drinking before school at like 7 in the morning. And at that time, I lived this double life. My mom and my good group of friends, they always thought I was such a good kid, and I don't know if it was the sports, I think it was. My school was infamous for kind of a great football team, and if you were a star on the football team, which I was, you kind of did whatever you wanted to do, so I skipped classes but still passed, you know. In a way, I didn't have that accountability, and I felt like I could do whatever I want, and I took advantage of it, and it cost me. At one point in my life, it definitely did. I got older, and consequences started coming my way.
At what point in your life did you get addicted to drugs? And then, and take us down the road, the progression where it led you. And
so I was a senior in high school, and that all continued. I've tried opiates a little bit, but I didn't like it. It brought me down, and I wanted to stay up. I wanted to laugh and have a good time, so I didn't get into it then. I was a senior in high school. I just got asked to play on one of the top 5 baseball teams in the country during the summer league and spring league. So I'd fly down to Florida, and I'd travel over the country with this baseball team. It was top 5 team in the country. That
was fun, wasn't it?
It was a great time. I had a blast.
Yeah.
It was the one time, like in high school, where I wasn't really doing too much because I was just so focused on baseball now. I was getting noticed. I had professional scouts asking this guy, Mark Holtzman, he was like our manager kind of, and talking about me. Schools asking about me. We traveled from Georgia to California, across the country, just playing. They traveled all over. I didn't get to go to some of them. My parents just couldn't afford some of the things, but they got me to Georgia, Florida. I think it was Texas at one point, I don't know, but I remember getting this offer to go to school, and my grades weren't the best. It was just passing grades. I didn't go to class, so they just kind of passed me with B's, so I couldn't really get into the bigger name schools I really would love to, but I still got offered pretty much a full ride to go play in North Carolina. I went to North Carolina that year, 2010, and I think it was the first practice, and we all had to go. It was tryouts, but everybody on the team had to go, and we were just warming up. And I remember starting a long toss. In baseball, we do these long tosses, help strengthen your arm, and my arm just kind of went limp, and he threw the ball back to me, and I tried to throw again, and it went about 3 feet, and I went and got an x-ray and MRI, and I needed Tommy John surgery, and they handed me a bottle of, I think it was Percocets, for the pain after my surgery. And I remember I got back home that day, and I haven't even taken any yet, and I opened the bottle, and the first thing I did was take 4.
Pretty powerful drug, and that's a lot, isn't it? 4?
Yeah, especially, I haven't really been using it, but it's what I've always done. I was excessive, I was extreme. Anything I got, if I knew it altered my mind in any way, I wanted it. Like I said, I always was seeking that approval and for that comfort, and I just never felt it in my own skin. So at that time, it was like, this is it, this helps, this is what always worked, this is my coping. And I was a little bit more depressed. I felt like my career was at a standstill, even though all I can do is go to physical therapy, all I can do is put in the work, but I thought it was just easier to just sit back and kind of fall back and recluse. And I started drinking real heavily. I was using those opiates, and it was right after that year, I wasn't even there a year, they were calling my parents, and they came knocking on my door because I haven't been to class in about 2 months. I was just in my room every day drinking, smoking pot, and using those opiates. And
at college?
Yeah, in college, right in the dorm room. And my mom drove up to North Carolina real fast, and I remember I manipulated the situation, but it was kind of ironic because I really was depressed, but I told them I was so depressed and homesick, and they just kind of let me go back home, and that's when I got back home, and it snowballed pretty fast from there.
So you started spiraling downhill from that point.
Oh, yeah.
So you were doing marijuana, you were drinking, you were doing Percocets while you were in college, and when your mom took you back to New York, then you started getting into some really bad stuff.
Yeah. I remember I got back and I tried doing the school thing again, going back to school. I went to 3 different schools in New York and never finished a semester. I called my old buddies. I had my good group of friends still doing good to this day, good group of guys. They just, drink like normal people and hang out, like socialize like normal people, but I just was never that. And I had my other life where I was with all my friends that sold drugs, and that's what I was going to do. So I got a job at a bar, started as a bar back. I worked a few days a week making good money at this place, and I started selling marijuana, and I started selling
you was
cocaine
making some
like
extra
I used
money
to.
then, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I used to own a health club 30 years ago, and there was this bodybuilder that came in and went to work for us, and he said, "Oh, I don't care about the money. I just, we weren't paying hard, we were paying minimum wage, I think. I don't care anything about the money." And so he came to work for us, and it wasn't long after that I learned he was selling steroids. He was making his money selling steroids. He didn't care anything about working at the club, but he wanted to, so you were kind of doing the same thing. You were making money on the side.
Mm-hmm. And using a lot. And then I was leaving the bar one day, and I was still drinking all the time, so I drank, especially at the bar. I got my free booze there, and I was driving home, and of course I got that blue light special, and I pulled over to the side of the road, and all I did was walk over to the window, and I rolled down the window, and he just looked at me and he said, "Step out of the car for a second." He smelt it on me right away. I got my first driving while intoxicated. I was way over the limit. I think I blew like a .2 something. And they found drugs in my possession. They happened to drop those in the charges, which I was lucky, but about 3 weeks later, I got another DWI.
Wow, two in 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. My lawyer was not happy. My parents were not happy, and they were starting to see that I think there's a problem there, which I hid pretty well.
Hold that thought, Nick. We've got to go to a break. Folks, you got to stick around and hear the rest of Nick's story. He actually becomes addicted to heroin. And, most people never overcome that. So stick around. We'll come back in just a moment and let Nick share that part of his story and how he overcame heroin addiction.
Hi, I'm Krista Anderson, founder and CEO of Astore. If you or a loved one has been affected by addiction, you know how difficult it is to find a successful path to healing. That's why In Your Corner Ministries has created this Addiction Knockout Workbook. It's like Celebrate Recovery and AA on steroids. We would like to ask you to join us in bringing healing to people around the world. For every $10 donation, one book will go to someone seeking recovery. You can also send a book in honor of a loved one. Go to addictionknockout.com to make a donation today and join us in changing lives by knocking out addiction.
Okay, friends, we're back with Nick Astore. Nick, before the break, you talked about getting busted for DUI twice in 3 weeks, and things were really starting to get bad for you.
Yep. After that second one is when I made that phone call to one of my buddies that I knew would have the kind of drugs I was looking for, and I was really looking for some what they call roxycodone, and Roxy's on the street, so to speak. And he said, "Well,
Roxy like Oxy or?"
Yeah, it's an opiate. It's like Percocets, painkillers.
Yeah. A
little stronger. And I was calling him for that. I was like, I'm just feeling depressed. I just want something to just kind of mellow me out and just sit down and just kind of sulk in this misery for a little bit. And I gave him that call, and he said, "Well, I don't have that." He called it dog food. And I said,
dog food?
Yeah, yep. And I thought about it. I was like, "Well, what's dog food?" And he wouldn't really tell me. I guess because it was over his phone. He said, "It's an opiate. It's good. You'll like it." And I said, "You know what? Yeah, I'll take $20 worth. Will be fine." I got $20 worth, and I brought it upstairs, and I used it, and I think I threw up instantly.
Was it something you swallowed? It wasn't.
I snorted it.
Yeah, you were snorting it, so you weren't on a needle at this time.
No, no, not on the needle. I snorted it. I vomited. It was ugly. It was pretty, but then I sat down, and I loved the way it made me feel. I was like, I can get past that part. I want to keep doing this, and So I kept selling drugs, I kept doing that, and about a year later, I just got like it was a nice little car, a little Mazda RX-8. I was making pretty good money. I was maintaining for a while, and my tolerance just kept increasing and increasing. And by the end, I think I was 21, going on 22 at this time. I really started losing everything. I just got fired from my job because I kept not showing up because I started withdrawing. So I'd call out of work and I'd be trying to get my drugs before I went to work, and I wouldn't be able to. So I'd tell them I'm going to be late, and I kept doing that, and they fired me, and I lost my job. And my mom was scared. I could see it on her face, especially when I got fired, that she knew that something was wrong. She could tell them just the way I looked. When I'd look in the mirror, I was skinny. My face was sunken in, and she knew something was going on. And by that time, I'd pretty much lost everything. I was in and out of the house. I never really had my own place. I was always in and out of Mom's house. They always want me to leave, and I was stealing from them, stealing from my brothers, my sisters.
Drugs will make you do that. You
Yeah.
take the most righteous person in the world and get them hooked on that stuff.
Yeah.
They'll steal from their mama, their grandmama, the store, anything they can to support that habit.
Yeah, and I did. I went as far as if I couldn't take it from them, that's when I started taking it from stores and from other people. I did whatever I'd do to just get that fixed, just to feel okay. And everybody was just thrown to the wayside for that. I didn't care about nothing but that one little thing. And it got pretty bad. I remember the first time I used the needle because I wanted to die. I remember I was in my room and...
Why did you want to die? The drugs gotten to the point where they were depressing you?
Yeah, I was to the point where I was alienated. No one wanted to be around me. Everybody knew I had a problem, except for I kind of maintained like my good group of friends with not really knowing too much. I'd only come around when I was feeling okay. And I had this other life that was starting to fall by the wayside, but I started having people look for me, knocking on my door. My family was constantly trying to get me help. I remember going to drug and alcohol counselors. They openly knew I had a problem now. And for myself, I just felt like there's no other way out. I can't stop. I've tried stopping many times. I did the whole substitute one for the other. At this point, also, on top of using heroin, I was drinking every day. I was pretty much taking Xanax with it. I think there's about a good 3 years of my life where it's just in and out.
Yeah. So you got to this point where you're in a state of depression. You wanted to die, so somebody gave you a hit of heroin to try. Mm-hmm. And you were hooked instantly, or you just liked it so much that you went back to it?
It was like a
flip
of the switch. Instant.
You know, I was a professional boxing trainer for over 20 years of my life. One of my guys that had been involved in drugs made a statement like, one time is too many and 1,000 times is not enough. And that sounds like a paradox. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't make sense. One time is too many and 1,000 times is not enough. And basically what he was saying was like when you hit it that one time, you were addicted, and after that, 1,000 times wouldn't satisfy the craving.
No, nothing could satisfy the craving. I remember times where I've gotten large quantities, and I'd be like, "This is great. I'll have this all week," and it'd be gone in just a few days, and I just never had enough. I remember.
What was your habit? What was your daily habit? What were you normally spending?
I spent anywhere from $300 to $400 a day.
And that's quite a bit, because I think I read where the average heroin addict's $150, $200 a day, and you were spending $300 to $400. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all that money was never mine. After a certain point, I couldn't hold the job. All the jobs I got, I started stealing from them. I lost the jobs. I'm lucky enough that they didn't file any charges against me. I know a couple places definitely could have. But everything I obtained from that point on was just taken.
You were stealing stuff to support your habit. You were selling drugs, whatever you had to do to...
Yeah, whatever it took. Really, and I think the worst part about that, especially with my family, it wasn't that I was just stealing their money and their belongings. I was my sister had 2 kids. I was stealing food off my niece and nephew's plate. I was stealing clothes off their back. I was stealing that new car to my mom's driveway. I was stealing that comfort that they had to just kind of maybe even possibly retire soon. Who knows, they're getting older. And I was stealing all that peace and joy and happiness. And I know for a fact I was stealing sleep from all my family members, but especially my mom. She was always up worrying about me.
you, right? Yeah,
She was
absolutely.
always up. I'd see her up at night when they'd take me back in. They'd keep me in the house, and I'd be leaving 1, 2 in the morning to go get my fix again, and she'd be up. She'd be waiting, asking where I'm going.
How long were you addicted to heroin?
4 to 5 years.
Wow.
The last 3 years were really bad. The first couple I maintained okay.
So how did you get clean?
Well, I remember my last day in New York. One of my last days, close. So after this point, I asked for help, and we finally got to looking for help. I was caught red-handed stealing money again from my mom, and it was like 12 in the afternoon, and she was just screaming, crying, flipping stuff in the house, just begging for me to just give me her money back and just go get help. Just don't do it, don't go. I walked out of the house, and she walked after me, and still outside crying, and I went down, and my dope dealer's house was only a block down from my house, and I went and got those drugs, and I came back home, and she was leaving. And she left for a long time, and I remember just having to sit in that house with all the stuff flipped over, and I got my fix, I did my drugs, and I thought for myself for the first time is rather than, I was always in that place of hopelessness, and I felt for the first time, you know what, I'm just going to go get help. I can't live like this anymore. We made those phone calls, and about a week later, some stuff happened, and it wasn't working out. My mom she explains that she was crying, praying to God to just please just find me a good place. I think we were working with someone that was trying to send me to Florida and California, and she knew what went on there. She didn't want me to kind of go to the place there. She knew me pretty well too. She didn't want me to go to a place there. And finally, she kept searching treatment centers, and Discovery Place pulled up. And the thing about Discovery Place is a spiritual retreat rather than just a treatment center. And she was looking over it, and she just thought in her head, this is the place. And she told me, and I was willing enough that I said, I don't care, I'll go. And they told me it was Nashville, and I liked
So
the
you
sound
come
of that.
from New York City, as the commercial says, all the way to Country Music USA,
Yeah.
Nashville, Tennessee, and you end up out in the suburbs, out in the boonies. I think it's Burns, Tennessee, where Discovery Place is at, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so you're out there, and it's like culture shock for you, I'm sure.
Definitely culture shock, and I wasn't used to it. I was always used to like hugging my family members and giving them a kiss on the cheek, hello, even the men in the family. It's just how they did it at my house. And we pull up to Discovery Place, and right, we were driving through all these farmlands, and I'm like leaning my head back, thinking, where am I? Want to go back home. I changed my mind real fast, and we pull up, and the first thing is something they do at this place, which is probably one of the best things. Made me feel welcome, but I was terrified at the time because it never had happened. They took my bags out of the car, and they just set them down. I went to grab them, and they said, no, they got it. And like the whole Discovery Place is almost like 10, 15 guys walking out to you. And there's this one guy who's like 6'5", and I'm not a tall guy. I'm only 5'5" myself. And he walks up to me, and he's just like, I love you, brother. Give me a hug. And he gives me a hug, and I'm thinking the whole time, I don't like this. I want to go. I want to run.
Some of these hillbillies.
Yeah. Real loving, though. And I remember staying, knowing that after that point, after it all subsided, after I was, that fear kind of went away, and I walked through that fear, I was now walking through the doors. I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be for the first time.
And you said it was a spiritual place. Did something happen there to help change you?
Definitely. The conception is, and they use the big books of AA, but they really get into the spiritual side of it, and that's what they focus on mainly the whole time. It's God is the center of our recovery. It's the foundation, the keystone to what we do and how we recover. And I remember thinking that, and I grew up in a Catholic church, real holy family, so to speak, which kind of, as we got older, faded. But the God concept was hard for me to believe, being where I came from. And I remember battling it a lot when I was first there. And I had one man say to me, because I was kind of blaming God and saying he wasn't real, and he looked at me and he said, well, how could you blame something that isn't real?
Yeah.
And kind of hit me in that moment that, you know, and I walked up, they have this big hill, and I walked up to the top of the hill, and granted, I haven't really ever cried my whole life. I was always kind of taught in my family, as a man's a guy that doesn't cry, just is there to support everybody. And I walked up to the top of this hill, and I sat down, and I prayed my first truthful prayer in the first time in my life, and all it was is God, I'm broken and I need help. And I just kind of sat there, and this wave came over me. I felt this warm, fuzzy feeling. I started bawling, crying. Everything felt different and enhanced. It was my first true, what I call spiritual experience, I think. I
So you
believe.
yielded your life to God at that point.
First time I surrendered.
And you know, we're basically out of time, Nick, but in the next 30 seconds, tell us what you're doing now. I mean, you surrendered your life to God, and now tell us what you're doing.
Well, I'm working to become a licensed drug and alcohol counselor. I'm almost done with school. I work at 2 treatment centers right now. One, I'm an admissions coordinator there, and the other one I do group facilitation and counseling there. I'm currently under supervision. I live here. I stayed in Burns. I talk to my family all the time over the phone. They support me. Most importantly,
Met
I wake
a beautiful
up.
young lady.
I did meet a beautiful young lady, and still with her for 2 years now. And I wake up every day, and I just remind myself all I have is a daily reprieve contingent on the spiritual maintenance of my condition. I have a spiritual problem, and God always has to be the center. So I wake up, I try and read my literature, I say my prayers in the morning, I go about my day, say my prayers, and just remind myself without my own recovery, I can't help other people. And the only one that could help me and relieve me of my alcoholism, my drug addiction, is God.
And you're a new creature in Christ.
That's it.
So that's it. Thank you so much for sharing your story today, Nick. It is just simply amazing. And friend, you know, if you're out there and you're struggling with addiction, I don't care what kind of addiction it is, you can do the same thing that Nick did. You can cry out to God and say, God, help me. You know, Bobby Hayden Jr., who co-hosts this program with us some of the time, was a heroin addict. Well, he was a rock star who became a heroin addict, lived in a cardboard box in Los Angeles, California, on Skid Row for 10 years. He has so many scars on his legs, he looked like he had chicken pox all over his legs and arms from where he stuck the needle. Somebody said, Bobby, cry out and ask Jesus. Call on Jesus and ask Jesus to save you. And Bobby gave his life to Jesus Christ. And just like Nick, he was set free from heroin addiction. And my friend, the Bible says that God is no respecter of persons. If you're struggling with addiction, just cry out and say, Lord, save me. And He will. He'll redeem you. He'll lift you up out of the miry clay and put you on solid ground and help you. So friend, the first thing I would recommend that you do is give your life to Jesus Christ. He's the only one that can deliver you. Thank you so much for watching the program today. We'll look forward to seeing you again next week on the next edition of In Your Corner.